All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. This is Ovaya Inspiracion, and I do have my wife next to me, but she'll come like in a few seconds. And today we have a very special guest who's not new to us. Is a friend and sister in Christ coming from Atlanta. So we got Brittany up in here. What's good, sis?
Hey, bro, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Enjoying this next couple of months, well, next couple of weeks before our son comes into this
I
world.
know. Oh my gosh, I know. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. Like seeing the pictures of Kiana and baby Caleb and you guys. I'm like,
Mhm.
he's gonna be on this side soon. It's so exciting.
Yeah, just a couple of more weeks. Like she's 33 weeks, pretty much 7 more weeks.
Wow, I love it. It's gonna be so
Yeah.
exciting.
So yeah. So here we have my wife. Where's she at? You gotta come
I'm right
closer,
here.
boo.
You have to move
Hold on, let me
over.
see something. Let me make this bigger. All right, there we are. Look at this queen right here.
Uh,
Fine.
I got an idea. Let me put this back. Now that's better.
There we go.
That's what it was. I needed to switch the scenery. But today we have a part two of this topic that we've been talking about since 2 weeks ago. I think it was. We were talking about Christian dating and what does that look like? What is dating? What is courting? Do they mean the same thing? How does the world define dating? All that kind of stuff. And I know Brittany has a lot to say when it comes to that. But today I'm pretty sure she'll touch on that too. But today we're gonna focus more on red flags. All right, red flags, green flags, yellow flags. We're gonna talk about abstinence. What is it like to wait on God while you're single? you
mm,
know how is it hard? What do you do when you feel like all your friends are getting married? um, just a whole bunch of things that we can talk about. So it's going to be an interesting topic because Brittany, and I will put it in the description box. I think I already did, as a matter of fact, of her blog. She wrote a whole blog. That blog seems like an encyclopedia, and I don't even think she's done with it. And it's just a blog of all the red flags and green flags and yellow flags. But I know she has more to write on that, and I didn't even get to finish reading it. And I love it because this is one of the things that I talk about in my job with the youth
mm,
is relationship red flags. And when we talk about relationship, we're not limited to romantic. We're talking about relationship in general, whether it's friends,
right.
your teachers, your parents, and of course romantic. So those red flags are in there, and we throw it out there. And I ask them some good questions all the time, and it stirs them up, and I love it. But without further ado, so we're gonna spend this first hour. And for those that are watching, we got 8 people live. Well, 8 people live. Okay, if you don't mind, just tell us where you're watching from, what state, what country, what island, what cave. I don't know where you're from. Let us know where you're watching, so I can shout you out. But in the meantime, this first hour, we're going to dedicate more to Brittany talking about, you know, these things. And then the second hour will be dedicated more to questions. We already had some questions written down that some people asked the last live stream. But for those that are watching, feel free to ask questions on the live chat. I will see it. So we'll get to it in the second hour. And I'll be highlighting some of the comments that may show up and whatnot. So, all right. So, with that being said, Brittany, it's all yours. I don't know where you want to start off. Maybe you want to start off with the red flags. I don't know. But that's all I knew.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. So I guess we can kind of. I'll just go with the flow, And if you guys have like, oh, we'll talk about this, talk about that, we could do that too. Um, yeah, so I think kind of the first thing is like something that I've recognized in not necessarily just my dating journey, but like in other people's dating journeys. Oh, hold on one second, guys.
No problem. She'll be back. But yes, what's up, Sakia? Hey, you finally made it this time in the chat. Because I
Yes.
know you did it, you couldn't last time, but you made it. Hopefully, your sister is watching too. But glad you were here. This is gonna be an interesting topic. because we need to talk about red flags. And a lot of times, my Nana said, "What's up, my brother? Good to see you again. I know you have some good questions later on." Um, but yeah, these red flags, it's crazy because a lot of these red flags we never realize that they are red until something happens. So yeah, but go ahead, Brittany.
Okay, yeah, I had to tell my family and I were hanging out, so I had to tell my brother bye. He was leaving. Um, yeah, so it's interesting. I actually finished my relationship, how to figure out your relationship standards and relationship and dating standards post last week, and I actually have it on my blog. If anyone wants to check it out, but it breaks down non-negotiables, preferences, deal breakers, baggage, red, yellow, and green flags. And I think these are things that when people are dating or getting to know people, they have no idea that there's all these different layers, to like all these different, compartments to kind of consider, because non-negotiables are different from preferences. You can budge on one, but others, like something, the non-negotiables, like you're like, I'm not budging on these ever. Preferences are like, there's some wiggle room.
Mhm.
Deal breakers aren't necessarily red flags, but they could be. Red flags are always deal breakers, just like some of these nuances that I think also as Christians, like we haven't talked about. And Manny, like, I'm really glad that you said relationships is not just not just about romantic, but it's about platonic and familial and like, relationships with other people. But yeah, so that red flags blog post I started in like 2020, and I finally it took a while to put it together. And I think I numbered them, and there's like almost 200 that I kind of like found as I was like researching, because there are red flags on there that people are probably like, oh, that's like something that I should not tolerate, or like really be like, no, it's time to run. So, yeah, there's a lot on there, but I classify red flags as anything that mean like, this is absolutely unacceptable. Like, I gotta go. Like, red means run, and there are things like any kind of spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, financial, sexual, verbal abuse, or mistreatment, because these are indicators of larger issues that will continue to happen. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, red flags are not yellow flags. Like, some people think red flags are things you can work through. But if you're with someone and they call you outside your name, like, I feel like that's like an automatic red flag deal breaker. Like, oh no, I don't tolerate that. Like, why would I stay with somebody who's done that? Now, I know some people could be like, oh, like, it was one time, they didn't mean it. And I'm like, honestly, with that kind of stuff, I'm like, you know, just recognize, if you want to stay with that person, you really have to be, I feel like you're going to be on eggshells, like on guard. Like, are they going to do this again? Is it going to go further than this?
Mm.
So yeah, for me, red flags are always going to mean run. Like, do not collect $200. Do not pass go. Like, this is not a game. Um, so yeah, so that's red flags. Yellow flags are more so things that are, that can be worked through. And I've got examples on my blog, obviously. So a yellow flag would be something like, okay, for example, oh, you're dating somebody and they don't currently have a job.
Mm.
So that could be a red flag, or it could be yellow flag. If it's like they are actively looking for employment, well, I think if you don't have a job, I don't think you need to be dating. You got other priorities, your things out of order. But, let's say you meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm in between jobs. If they're just sitting like a bump on a log and they don't care, that's a red flag. Like, you don't even need to don't think about it. But if it's like, I've been interviewing, I've been, trying to make, get things together. Like, I've been hustling to find a job. It's like, okay, that's kind of a yellow flag. But the fact that they are like, we're moving towards seeking active employment, that
Mhm.
like, think, okay, I can work with that. That's fine. Another yellow flag would be like, if let's say your family and maybe your friends are kind of like, I don't really like this person. It would depend on, I would ask like why they don't like that person, because sometimes misery loves company, or some people don't want to see you happy, right? And they could just be pulling stuff out the air to say, oh, well, this, that, and that, and you're like, what? But if you have people in your life who truly care about you and really do want the best for you, if they're like, I'm not sure about some stuff, definitely take that into consideration and move cautiously if they are bringing up valid points. Keep it
Yeah.
open. Um, Actually, a couple years ago, I knew this woman who started dating this guy, And I, was like asking, because I'm a question asker, because I want the best for my sisters. I was like, yeah, what about this and this and this and this? And one of the things that she, I asked about like kind of his spiritual walk, and I was kind of getting some like fuzzy answers. And in my gut, I was immediately like, this dude is no good. She don't need to be with him. And I told her, I was like, hey, I was like, that doesn't sound like that is a good fit for you. Now, you can't make anybody. I'm a very big advocate for like speaking up and being like, hey, this doesn't sound like a good situation. I can't make you do anything, but I'm just gonna let you know, like, this don't sound like it's a good idea. And so, she decided to, continue on with the relationship, got married, and I don't know when it happened, but now they're divorced. And I was like, oh, now I don't know exactly what happened, but in my gut, I was like, man, like, I really was like, sis, you don't need to even date this guy, because he don't sound like he's where he needs to be spiritually, like, at all, Trying to think of another yellow flag. So yeah, so those are like, some those would be like 2 yellow flags. And obviously green flags are, does this person, love the Lord? Is there fruit of the Spirit? Are they teachable, humble, repentant, broken over their sin? How do they address their own sin? How do they address the sin of others, when they do? Are they loving and kind? Are they also bold and speak up when they need to? Are they spiritually I just said spiritually mature? Are they emotionally healthy? Are they taking care of their own emotions, and are they emotionally available and mature? Do they like to have fun and enjoy life? Are they well-rounded? Nobody wants somebody who's just like, oh, I'm only gonna like do this one thing and I'm super serious all the time and I can't laugh and have fun. But nobody also wants somebody who's like can't ever be serious. So like, are they well-rounded? Are they balanced in their life? Yeah, and just like, do others genuinely speak well of them, and things of that nature. So yeah. So yeah, those are just some red, yellow, and green flags.
So I see. I'm looking at your master list right now, right?
Yeah.
And I see that which you kind of briefly brushed on a little bit, but I want you to elaborate for the audience, because and hopefully we get to talk about why people ignore red flags, which is what you also have on your blog. But you mentioned 2 types of red flags, which are personal red flags and universal. So I guess it's safe to say that, red flags can somewhat be subjective. Like, what would be a red flag for me may not necessarily be a red flag for you.
Right.
Which would be a personal red flag.
Right.
But what are some examples of universal red flags that single people who are dating should definitely be looking out for?
Right. No, that's a great question, Kiana. I'm really glad you brought that up. So universal red flags are definitely any kind of like abuse, any kind of mistreatment. Like, nobody should tolerate, any of that, like calling you outside their name, calling like other people outside their name, just abusive, aggressive, even like passivity is definitely a red flag. Like, let's say you're out and there's some kind of like issue or altercation that happens, and that person doesn't try to step in to like, protect you or guard you. And I guess I'm particularly, more so talking about like women. Like with men, if like, some dude tries to like come for you and he just kind of is like, oh, I'm just kind of chilling. It's like, wait, you didn't even come to like my defense, kind of my rescue. So yeah, I feel like any kind of situation that you're in that makes you feel unsafe, uncared for, unprotected, disrespected, like, always red flags. Always universal red flags. Personal ones, hold on one second.
Hope you're enjoying some of the red flags. I'm literally looking at her website and she has 143 red flags.
Hey, that's a good list.
That's a good list, and she has more, I believe. But it's a good a good list to read, because hey, you never know that you may be in a relationship or you have a friend and there's red flags, but you just don't realize it, because either you just passive about it, you don't think it's that serious. Let me tell you, even friendship, There's a lot of people that have friends and they are actually bullies towards you, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't see it as being bullied. You don't see it as anything wrong until something really happens and you start to realize, wow, this person is been bullying me for a long time. I just never realized that it was actually a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Those are different things that we need to take account and watch for, because they exist for a reason.
Yeah,
And
there's signals.
yeah, there's signals, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
should never ignore any red flag. Now, when you see a red flag, that doesn't automatically mean, oh, let me break up with that person or let me end the friendship I have with that person. No, it just means that, okay, a light bulb went up. There's a red flag. Now you need to communicate,
Mm.
because if you don't communicate, I tell my students this: if you don't communicate your red, how you felt from that person, then you're only giving them permission to keep doing that over and over. And you know what? A lot of people that have red flags, they don't even know they have it.
Yep, that
That's
is
why
true.
it's our job, our responsibility to communicate and speak up. Um, and obviously do it in a way where less, as much as less conflict or can happen, because you can have healthy conflict, but don't come out nasty, because you can make things worse.
Absolutely. And I think too, real quick, it's important to note, and hopefully Brittany can elaborate this on as well. But um, it's not our job to fix people. Like, where, yes, everybody, there's not one person on this earth that is perfect. We all have some level of toxicity because of sin, and it is our job, our personal work, to constantly vet our own selves and examine our hearts, like the Bible says, right? And make sure that we are walking in the light and being conformed to Christ. But it is not our job to fix people
Yeah,
and to, eliminate those toxic traits. They have to do that. So,
exactly. And it is hard to see red flags because you want the relationship to work. It's either that, or it's simply that you just letting the red flags, continue and go by, and you're just relying on a false hope that they may change. And you say, oh, I trust and I have hope, but that's not real hope if they are continuously, consistently doing something that makes you feel a certain way. That's false hope, and that's where you need to put a stop on that. You know what I'm saying? Because if you don't put a stop on that, like I said, you're going to be a doormat.
Mm-hmm.
yep.
So we need to speak up. And as I said, great point. I know a few people like that. They'll endure a painful, toxic relationship in order to try and save the other person.
Yep.
Right? And yeah, like
Absolutely.
Kiana said, a savior complex or a desire to feel needed. Or
Yeah.
another thing too, what I tell my youth is that my students is that a lot of people don't know how to get out of toxic relationship. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because all they know is being in a toxic relationship. So they can't
Mm,
imagine themselves being in a healthy one.
Yeah.
Of course, the fear of unknown,
yep.
and they just don't know what to do. So, and I tell my students, you know what? Many times, if you are always in a toxic relationship, most of the time it's because you are what you attract. You're toxic yourself, so you're attracting toxic people as well. So we have to also look into ourselves, like, damn, why am I toxic? And why am I in a toxic relationship? There's something about me,
Mm,
that's making it toxic. So we have to look
it's
at
a
those
good
things.
point. Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
So I did have a scenario, Brittany,
Yeah.
two of them. What are your thoughts on you go on a date with a guy
Mm-hmm.
on your first date, and the guy, typically for the most part, right, he'll pay for the dinner. And but the dinner is not the only thing you'll do that day. You probably have other events, probably like a activity, whatever. And let's say by the end of the night, that guy has spent $400, but every date that you go on with him, he continues spending that much money. What do you think about that?
So first of all, that's a lot of money. Especially for just like you're initially getting to know someone. I'm like, that's throwing up red flag. I'm getting flags, you know. I'm like, okay, this is an exorbitant amount of money. It's like either you're trying to overcompensate for something else, or you're trying to get something else that doesn't have monetary value. So okay, well, let's just say like I go on a date with a guy. First of all, I don't really normally do dinner dates in the beginning, and we can go into that. Like I have like a tiered level kind of like approach that I have to dating for various reasons. But let's say I do, you know, meet a guy and he's really cool. He's like, oh, hey, you know, let's go to dinner, whatever. I'd be like, okay, cool. If he was like, let's go to Ruth's Chris, I would probably honestly be like, no, we can go somewhere a little bit more low key, because I'm just like, that's just for me, that's just like too much in the beginning. But if as I was getting to know a guy, he was increasingly wanting to spend more and more and more money, I would actually be like, so is there a reason that you want to go to all these like expensive places and spend all these, you know, spend all this money? I would just, because y'all know I'm a very bold person. So I have no problem being like, so let me ask you a question, you know? I would definitely ask him like, so why are you spending so much money up front? And kind of go from there and just try to get into his mind of like why he feels like he has to spend so much money on a woman that he's dating in the beginning, you know. I don't even think if I was married, I won't say that. Like if he has the money and he wants to do something extravagant for like my birthday or like every now and then, I'd be fine with that, but he'd be my husband. But any man who wants to spend that much money on a woman in the beginning that he's dating, that's always going to be like,
yeah, it's questionable because it's like,
yeah,
what are you trying to get from me?
Why is
exactly.
that?
What do you want in return?
But why is that suspicious though?
Because, well, I'm gonna give you, and I'm not saying this specific story I'm gonna share is not every man, but it's just still you still want to ask questions. So my coworker, I think it was a cousin of his, a woman. She went on a date with this guy, you know, and the guy spent a good amount of money, and he kept doing it every time they went on a date, to the point that to the point that, you know, they shared obviously phone numbers and address, home address, and he would send her expensive shoes as gifts.
And
Like,
this is somebody that's just dating. They're not in a
yes,
relationship.
yes. So he would
Okay.
send periodically, or not periodically, like often, occasionally, expensive, you know, Jordans or whatever the case may be. And it turns out that this guy showed up at her house without her knowing, banging on the door looking for her. He was a creep, and she had to move.
So yeah, this is when you said $400+ this is something that's called love bombing, which
Yes.
yeah, it's love bombing, which oftentimes, now everybody's not a narcissist, so we kind of have to be careful with like using that term, but there are people who have narcissistic tendencies. But love bombing is when someone uses like spends an exorbitant amount of money and sends gifts and just over the top with their affection, and specifically monetary, you know, gifts and things of that nature, to try and win this person over, so that they can kind of reel them in and then have control over them and be like, oh, look, I've been spending this much money and da 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 da, like all these different things. It's like they're trying to exchange gifts for your time and affection and love, which is obviously a red flag, because, you know, that really shouldn't be able to
You can be bought, right?
Right, exactly. So it's like, oh, you can be bought kind of thing. Yeah. So any guy who's spending that much money, especially up front like that, like I'm like, sounds like you're trying to love bomb. Like, what is your ulterior motive, you know, of that nature?
So this just this came up for me in my mind because somebody actually asked me this question, and it was a young man a few weeks ago, and I'm glad I remembered now so we could talk about it since we're on the topic of money. So we have the extreme of love bombing, right? Like spending $400+ on somebody that you barely know.
Right.
But then what do you think about guys who are not necessarily pressed or don't feel pressed to spend or even pay for a date, you know, like expecting to go half on a date or not prepared to pay Is it the man's responsibility to pay for a date? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I have a couple different thoughts of that, and I'll share my experience and like some other things. I think there's only been like one time that I've been on like a number of dates. Only one time I can think of that I had to pay for my own meal on a date. Otherwise, like there was a guy, okay, well, I'll start with this stuff. So I was in Georgia State. This is a couple years ago. I met this guy on Facebook and he seemed cool. He's like, hey, do you want to go out? And I was like, yeah, sure. So we went to Atlantic Station and he didn't have a car at the time, which I'm like, okay, we're in college, like whatever. And so his friend was going to like drive him to the dorms to come get me. And then we were going to go. And he was like, oh, hey, like, do you have a friend that can come for like my friend? And I was like, sure. So I asked one of my friends, I was like, hey, I want to go on a date with this guy. Do you want to come be like, you know, do like a double date thing? She's like, okay, sure. We get to the restaurant. This guy has no money. So it's me. Right. So my friend, I order, my friend orders, and I think his friend orders, or maybe he doesn't. I can't remember. But it's like either only 2 or 3 of us eating, and he's sitting there like not eating anything because he didn't have any money. So I had to pay for my own food because we get there and it's like, so why did you ask me on a date? And then like I end up paying for my own food. So that was a very interesting situation. And I was like, okay. And like I didn't see him again after that. And it wasn't even just because of that. It was like some other stuff. I was like, yeah, this isn't a good fit. But I will say that every date I've been on with a guy, I've never had to pay. I have actually offered like, oh, you know, like, I've kind of done the whole like, oh, you know, like getting out my card or whatever. And they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, okay. I just put my card away and I was like, well, can I tip? And they're like, no, you're good. And I'm like, okay. So, personally, all the men that I've ever been on dates with, have always wanted to pay. And I know some people are like, oh, well, if whoever asked for the date, you know, should pay. But there are people who want to go Dutch. And I actually think there are a number of women who are open to going Dutch because for some reason, men think taking you to Applebee's means that you owe them your body. You know what I mean? So it's like for women, I understand, huh?
I said not Applebee's.
Yeah, girl, like Applebee's is garbage. I'm sorry if you like Applebee's. Like, let me upgrade you, okay? Like, we're not doing this. Like,
lower Chili's.
No, yeah, I'm just like, well, actually, I like Chili's, but the fact is the fact that a man would take a woman out and then expect like basically prostitution in exchange for food, you know, I'm just like, that's, you know, offensive. So there are some women who I think want to go Dutch because of that, because they're like, if I pay for my meal, then I don't owe him. He doesn't even, there's nothing in his mind that would make him
think. That is so sad.
Yeah. I know that's what I said too. I was like, the fact that you have to feel like I got to pay for my own stuff because I don't want this man. And then that even kind of makes me think, well, did you try to vet him to the best of your ability to make sure he's not like that? Because I honestly can say the guys I've been out with have never like been like, so what's up, you know? Yeah, personally, I like going out with men who are like, oh, like I got it, you know? Now if I did meet a guy who was like, oh, do you want to split? I'd be like, okay, sure. You know, that's not an issue for me. And I may or may not continue getting to know him depending on, you know, that or whatever. But, I think it really is up to a person's preference. And then Keon, I think you asked another part of the question about like oh gosh, did you ask if he couldn't or if he didn't want to?
I don't remember exactly. I'm sorry, pregnancy brain.
No, it's okay. I'm sitting here. I get lost in.
I don't remember how I phrased it, but I just think that for some reason, especially with nowadays, right? There's definitely obviously men out there who are still willing to, you know, take the tab, which I personally believe is appropriate for the most part. I mean, I'm not against going Dutch. I'm not against any of that. That's fine. But I find it really strange when guys have the expectation that they shouldn't have to, and if they do, then they need to get something in exchange. Just as you mentioned. So I guess, what does that say about a man when he feels like that's even a question, like, oh, who's paying? What do you think that says about him?
When, like, let's say I'm on a date and a guy's like, who? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're freezing a little bit.
Can y'all hear and see me now?
We can hear you. Yeah, we're good.
We're good?
We're good.
Okay, sorry. I had a phone call come in and I was like, oh no. Okay, Kiana, can you repeat that? You said, what do I think about if I'm on a date and the man's like,
what do
who's
you
paying?
think about a person who has to question whether or not he should pay for a meal on a date?
Yeah, I would gladly, I'd be like, we can split it, and that will be the last date I have with him.
Okay. Well,
that was simple.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, dude.
And I will yeah, and I will say
but
this.
But you know what? I do get the whole half and half because of how the girl feels like I don't owe you anything. Because some of my high school students, ultimately most of them say, yeah, the man should pay, but then some of them was like, I don't mind paying half because I don't feel like I have to owe anything. I don't want him to feel like I owe him anything. And I was like, that's a good point, and I don't see anything wrong with that if that's how you feel.
Yeah. I mean, and like Kiana said, like, I hate that it comes to that women feel like, okay, I got to pay for my own stuff so that this man doesn't expect anything from me. But let's see, there's something I was going to say. Okay, so I will say this though. So like, let's say, so this goes back to why I have like a tiered dating approach. So like if I meet someone like, hey, I feel like they're really cool. If they're like, hey, do you want to, I'd like to take you out sometime. I start with like coffee or walking ice cream dates. So I'm like, start small. Like, I really want to get to know someone, have engaging conversation, get to know who you are as a person. And I've got my top dating questions on my blog. I've got questions as you continue dating. And I have like a bigger one of like questions you need to ask before you get, like 18 sections of questions to ask before you even get engaged, So it's like really about the quality of questions that you're asking someone to try and get to know them and be like, okay, what's their character like? And so, but yeah, so I start small and work my way up because I'm all about quality versus quantity. So it's like, so if you go for like coffee and you're just sitting there, it's like, it's nothing for me to pay $5 or $6 for myself, and even I'd be like, hey, do you want me to cover your coffee? And he's like, yeah, sure. It's like $12, it's not like, oh, I gotta spend, pay my own, $20 tab, but it's like, you start small and you work your way up. And, I also don't want to get super dressed up, like super cute to go on a date with a man that I just met and don't even know if it could go somewhere. I'll look cute, I'll wear this, like some sandals or whatever, but like, honey, if it gets to the point where I'm putting on my real cute dress and my heels, we go together. Okay. Like, we go together, So it's like, we had a relationship. Yeah, we had a relationship at this point, because I'm like, we're working our way up to that. We're building and growing. So there is, so that's kind of like my thoughts with that. And then there was something else, and of course I forgot. So yeah.
So there's something that turns me off, which is also going to lead to my other scenario. Is like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm not spiritual enough. I don't know. But I just feel like when two people, Christians, they go on, or professing Christian, they'll go on a date. Yes, of course, God is their everything, and a lot of what they're going to talk about in life is God and God's word, Jesus, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I just feel like when people go on their first date or they first meet, like, I just think that they be too extra spiritual. Like, just be you. Like, just be normal.
What is extra spiritual?
I don't know. They just start going deep into spiritual things, and like, I'm not saying you can't talk about spiritual things on your first date or on your first meet.
Yeah.
But they just like.
So the whole date is like.
Yeah, and they just go deep on and everything, spiritualize everything. I'm like, bro, just be normal. Like act like a normal human being. Like I don't know. That turns me
So
off.
abnormal human beings over spiritualized things.
I guess.
You're
I guess. Maybe I'm not.
I get what you're saying though. I think the purpose of, obviously you want to talk about things of the Lord, right? That's super important. That's like first priority.
This
But
guy said they start talking in tongues to each other.
yeah, no, that's kind of, but you're getting to know someone, so asking things like what's your favorite food, what's your favorite color, tell me about your family, those things are just as important too, because if you're considering this person as a potential whatever, then yeah, talk about Jesus, but talk about the other things that are important for you to know too.
Of course, because you're not gonna be marrying Jesus. You're gonna be marrying that person if it goes to that way.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, but how do you what do you feel? What do you think about that?
Yeah. So this is actually, oh man, as I've talked to so many other like single Christian sisters, why I think part of why I have seen some of them date unbelievers, because sometimes we meet unbelieving men who have more of a personality and cool interests and like similarities on like, oh, he actually like he's adventurous and he's well rounded, like he likes to travel, and we talk like we like some of the same music, and we can have conversations about intellectual topics that aren't spiritual or whatever. And it's unfortunate because it's like, but you're missing like the biggest part, and that foundation is Jesus. So it can definitely be hard to find. Now I don't want to throw, because I've stopped saying there's no where all the good Christian men, because I'm like, they definitely exist. It's just finding the right ones for us, right? So no, they exist. You just got to find the right one for me. But no, I totally agree. And like I said, I'm a question asker. I've got like hundreds of questions. Like I'm always like, oh, hey, I'll send this, I'll send that. And because you have to think about it. If you are, dating to try and hopefully find a marriage partner, you're not going to be talking about spiritual things all the time. Just like, let's be honest, like when you get married, you're not going to be having sex all the time. It's maybe 1% of like the whole month. If you really break down, for example, okay, I'm gonna go there. So if you break down, there's 168 hours in a week, and there's 4 weeks in a month. That's what, maybe 600 something hours in a week. And if you have sex 3-4 times a week, and I don't know how long how long that takes or whatever, but like, if you break it down, it's like when it comes to sexual intimacy, it's less than 2%-3% of your whole month. So what else are you doing? You're doing life together. So you have to think like, okay, we love Jesus. That's the foundation. But what else do we have in common? So it's not just this, it's over spiritualizing it. Like, oh, you're a Christian, he's a Christian. It's like, no, we have to go deeper than that. What do you like to do? What's your vision for your life? How do you want to live for the Lord? Where do you want to live? Tell me what's on your bucket list. Tell me about your most embarrassing moment. Like, you're really getting to know someone at their core, because God made us, we have a mind, we have a body, we have a soul, we have a spirit, and there's so much depth to so asking deeper questions, and it helps you really get to know someone on a deeper level, and just like how their mind thinks, and all those different things. So no, it's vastly important to consider, oh yeah, like I actually like some of these other things, and not, like obviously like Jesus is the foundation, but it's just so much more attractive when you meet someone like, wow, he really loves the Lord, and you start asking like other questions. You're like, yo, okay, you're cool. Oh, you like that too? Oh, you've been there before. Well, what are your thoughts on this? And just, yeah. So it definitely needs to be both. It needs to be the spiritual and the practical, because we need both. We need both.
Sure.
And
sorry. No, go ahead.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I was listening a while ago. I was listening to Preston Perry and Jackie Hill Perry's podcast, and Jackie was saying how just because someone is a Christian, that doesn't mean that they're the Christian for you.
Boom.
And I think, and this could be for many reasons. We could go into all of that, but I think, you know, that's definitely the deal breaker for believers. Like, don't even waste your time going on a date with an unbeliever. Don't do it. We talked about that at our last live. Go watch it. I'm not going to
about that, but go ahead.
Yes. Don't waste your time, men, ladies and gentlemen. But you know, when it comes to dating believers, just like Brittany said, it's okay for, you know, to ask questions and to have things in common and want to, you know, be with somebody that's adventurous like you, or want to be with somebody that likes the same music as you, or whatever it is, you know. And those things aren't necessarily deal breakers, they're just things you have in common. And that's okay. Yes, you know, the fact that they're believers is of most importance because that's the foundation of your relationship. It should be. But don't let it stop there, because yeah, that person could profess Christ, but they could also be extremely selfish or extremely boring. And you don't want to be with someone that's extremely boring. You know, you might be extrovert who loves to go out and hang out, and that person is like a super homebody. Not that there's anything wrong with staying home or even going out. I mean, I'm the homebody and he's definitely the outgoing person, and we work. You know, we bring out the best in each other. But you know, it's just there's always extremes, and you want to look out for that too. And I think those things matter in a relationship for sure. They can make or break a relationship.
Yeah. So the scenario that I wanted to bring out, and it happens a lot, and I've seen it with people on my Facebook friends list that have shared on their, you know, whatever their story. So they'll date a guy, and it's usually girls that I encounter that say this. They'll date a guy, or they even get into a relationship after a while. Guy has solid theology, solid quote unquote reformed theology, and then later on, I see that this person posts that they're not talking anymore. She shared a story like, oh yeah, you know, this guy for a while treats me like this, and he has sound doctrine, but his true colors came out afterwards. He was horrible. Like, talk to us about that red flag, and how, and obviously we won't know until later on, you know, the true colors.
Yeah,
But what is some things to look out? Because I tell people, listen, they could have sound doctrine but be horrible, or they could be the most passionate, loving person with some heretical views. Two extremes.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I'm saying? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Because I have heard similar stories like that. Kind of coming out of the Reformed community, kind of like one foot in, one foot out, just like still like having friends in that world, and like coming out and being like, oh, this is so different and so much more freeing. It is like, obviously we want it really is about the fruit. It's about the fruit. Somebody can have, and I call it, so the three orthos, right? Orthodoxy, orthopathy, and orthopraxy. So right knowledge, the right heart affections, and the right practice. All three of those have to go together. So if someone is saying like, oh yeah, I love the Lord and I love the word, you know, of God, yet they're treating you like crap and they're treating other people like crap, it's like something is off here. Like, it doesn't sound like it doesn't look like you love God, because if you love God, you're going to love other people. And if you think that loving people means being a jerk to them, you know, calling people names, like whatever it is, like, what God are you actually serving? So it really is about like and that's why like it's important to take your time to like not just ask questions. I tell people know how to ask the right questions, which is why I have those questions on my blog. They're not yes or no questions. They are questions that really make you think, and like take like, wow, like let me actually think about that. It's not like something you could just somebody like could just answer like, you know, on a whim. It's like they would have to take time to really think about a thoughtful and engaging question. But it's about like you got to take your time. You got to ask the right questions, and you have to recognize, look at the fruit. And that's again why I made that list of red flags, because there are red flags that I think a lot of us just don't realize our red flags until somebody tells us, and we're like, oh my gosh, that's what that was. Either I ignored it on purpose or I just didn't know. But you know, if it is like a, you know, like I knew something was off, because I've got so many stories about how God was like, hey, this is a red, you run. And I was like, okay, say less, Lord, I'm out. But yeah, I'm like trying to lost, but yeah, it is really sad that that is something that is so common and prevalent, because I have friends that has happened to. You know, they've married these like uber reformed guys who have this great doctrine, and I'm like, but what is his character like? Because a lot of times those people who are like so hard-nosed about doctrine and always talking about doctrine, and this and this and this so staunchly, they oftentimes have really garbage poop on character. Like, and you can tell, like, and some of these people expose themselves online, and I'm just like, it's real easy to spot them. It's like, nope, I'm good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah.
So I would like to hear you elaborate more on, because I do think that we may have some people who are watching, who are wondering, why do we ignore red flags? So we're dating, right? And we may be dating someone that, you know, is obviously Christian, loves Jesus, professes to love Christ, but, you know, is showing some questionable behavior here and there. But a lot of times we make excuses for them, or we gaslight ourselves. Why do we do that?
Yeah. And I think Brittany King brought it up earlier. There's a couple of different reasons. I think one of the reasons is that as Christians, we always want to think the best of others, right? Because scripture, you know, does to a degree talk about thinking, you know, the best, you know, of others to a degree. But if you don't, and this goes even back to like, if you don't have sound doctrine, you're not able to say, okay, well, wait, I still have to use wisdom with when this applies, you know, because if someone like smacks me in the face and I'm like, oh, they just had a hard moment, you know, it's nothing, you know, I need to think the best of them. It's like, sis, absolutely not. That's like red flag, you're done. Like, goodbye. Like, it's time to go, you know. It's an automatic no. But I think one of the major reasons we do that is because we have misinterpreted scripture to think make thinking the best of people, like overlooking severe character flaws to the point where we're not like, no, this has to be corrected. This is not okay. So there's some misinterpretation of scripture there, depending on some of the like church backgrounds you come from, and that's a whole, you know, spiritually like wonky or, you know, abusive backgrounds. Another one is, you know, I know especially because we do live in a society still where some people believe that a woman's worth is attached to if she's in a relationship with a man. That does still exist in the world, because we live in a patriarchal society for the most part. It exists in some of the church, and it still exists in the world, you know, to varying degrees. So I think some women get to the point where they're like just so desperate to have a relationship with a man that they'll just like overlook red flags and say, well, any man is better than no man, you know, kind of mindset, which is so toxic. And it really says a lot about that woman's self-esteem and her, like where her identity truly lies. Another is ignorance. You may not know that this is a red flag, or you know it's a red flag. Or no, ignorance is like you don't know it's a red flag. Like maybe there's something inside that's like, oh, this doesn't feel right, but you're just like not sure.
Yeah, you ignore the signals.
Yeah, ignoring the signals. Another reason is, here's another one. Unfortunately, I've read stories of women who were in long-term relationships and they were seeing red flags and they felt like they couldn't get out, or like it was too late, or like they couldn't start over. They didn't want to start over, you know. It's like if they were to leave, they would feel embarrassed, right? And so they think staying with someone who has all these red flags is better than admitting, oh my gosh, like I messed, and I don't ever want to completely, depending on the situation, like completely cast blame, because I don't ever blame an abuse victim. But just being able to reflect, like they might be like, oh my gosh, I saw this and now I'm really seeing it come to, come more to light. I feel embarrassed if I leave, so let me just stay to try to save face, right? So it's a number of things. It's like wrong teaching, fear, loneliness, desperation, embarrassment, ignorance. I know some sisters and they're like, and the sister I was talking about who married that guy that I was like, sis, this is not a good idea. She was older. She was like close to 40, and really wanted to be married. And so I think she settled, and so that definitely happens where like, you're like, oh, I've been waiting. Okay, here's this guy. He's like, he'll do, like you're literally settling and you're like, he'll do. Some women get older, they get tired of trusting the Lord. They're like, Lord, I've been waiting for, 10, 12, how many years, I'll just take this guy. Overlooking these red flags, thinking maybe even like, oh, well, God can change him, or, oh, I can change him, like savior complex. And it's like, don't ever enter into a relationship with someone that you're like, oh, well, God can change this major thing, because it's like, you don't know the potential. Right. There's no guarantee that will happen. And if you really believe that God could change this person while you're with him, why don't you wait for God to give you someone who's actually a better fit for you? You know what I mean? Jackie said that in the last YouTube video that she and Preston did. And I was like, that's so great. So all that to say, those are kind of like some of the observations I've made as to why red flags are overlooked. I don't know if y'all have anything to kind of add, like as to why.
With red flags, that I guess with all of the issues that can exist in a dating relationship or even a long-term relationship, do you feel that in the Christian community, the church community, breaking up is looked down on or stigmatized? And how can one discern how or when to break up with somebody when they've decided, hey, there's too many red flags popping up everywhere, it's time to go? Two questions. Do you feel like Christians are more hesitant to break up, and why? And how can someone decline further interest in continuing a relationship safely?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's not like the whole breaking up thing in the Christian. That's not something I'm like, oh, that in my opinion, I think it depends on the type of background you come from. And so this even goes back to like dating versus courtship, right? So courtship culture, if you have kind of that mindset, it's like you're dating for marriage. That's it. Like, you're like one person at a time, like you're getting, you're dating them to see if you can like, get to, marry them. So I think it depends on the background. So you have like that one. So again, we're trying to stay away from extremes. So you have that extreme where it's like, oh, okay, we're courting to see if we can get married, or it's almost darn near like, no, you're married before you're married. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. It's too much pressure. Then on the other side, you have like, and I don't think dating, and we can go into this later because I know some people might disagree with me, which is totally fine. Where it's like dating multiple, well, I won't say dating multiple people, playing the field merely just for the thrill of the chase, So then there's that extreme. But to answer your question about, I do think some sectors of Christianity can make it hard for couples to break up when they do need to, which is unfortunate, because I've heard some people say like, oh, dating and breaking up is like practicing, marriage and divorce. And I'm like, right. No, I've literally heard people say
not
that.
At all.
No, right. Exactly. It's not. But there are people who have that mindset. So it's like, if you
do not have to end up marrying the person that you're dating at the time.
Exactly.
You don't. And I feel like that mindset certainly exists in the Christian community. Like there's just so much pressure to get to that end point, that end goal. Like it has to end there. And I always tell young people who are interested, whenever they share with me that, they're talking to someone or they're dating someone. And of course I encourage them. But I say you just need to keep an open mind and just be very aware that it might not end up in a relationship. You're just getting to know this person, and
Right.
Yeah,
the next step is deciding whether or not this person is a good fit for
exactly.
you. Because
Right.
once you enter a relationship with this person, it gets harder to leave. It does. You
Yep.
start making investments,
That's
and
why, again, I have to refer back to this because I do this at my job. That's why I always tell my youth, my students, when you're dating, first of all, dating is getting to know somebody, right? With the hopefully a potential of long-term relationship with that person.
right.
But not only that, you're intentionally getting to know them, not moving too fast, not
Right.
awaken love too fast in a dating stage. Because if you get into a relationship and have that status of boyfriend girlfriend or whatever you call each other, and you barely know each other like that, that's going to be super hard to come out of it. If something bad happens, there's a breakup or whatever the case may be, you're going to get hurt. And I ask my students, at what level of intimacy you're willing to have with that person that you're dating or you're in a relationship, that if you were to break up,
Mhm.
the friends, you can still remain friends, that it's not awkward.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we really have to think about it. And I tell them, listen, you're young, you're high schoolers, your hormones are all over the place.
Yeah.
Your brain development does not develop until you're 25 years old, and you're doing things that should be done at a later age,
Yeah.
not at your age, because not because you're dumb, but because your hormones are all over the place. You're relying on your feelings and
Mhm.
emotions. You're not always gonna make the best decisions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's important that we take our time in getting to know that person. There's no need to rush. Like,
Mhm.
why? Yeah, she may look good, he cute, or whatever the case may be, but there's gonna be a point where that you're gonna over. I mean, not that you're gonna stop looking that he or she look good, but there's more to that.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Because he ain't gonna wake up looking cute every morning. There's a lot more. Just like when you said earlier about sex in a married relationship. What do you think people have sex 5 times a day for 30 days? Impossible. And especially when there's kids involved, even worse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it takes hard work for that to continue. But again, it's taking your time so you don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Ask questions. Ask him or her, what were your past relationships like? You know, even if they were to lie to you, but at least you're asking the questions.
Right.
Because later, sooner or later, it'll come out. If they treated all the other girls or guys horrible, but they treating you like a queen or a king, listen, eventually it's not gonna last long of treating you like a queen or a king,
Right.
because he still dealt with some issue from the past, and just because he's in a new relationship doesn't mean everything's gonna be fine. You know what I'm saying? We have to be intentional with
Mm.
ourselves, especially as believers. Like we're not here to be like the world and just date and recreationally speaking. It doesn't
Mm.
work like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot to it. But I do want to get into the whole singleness and waiting on the Lord and feeling lonely sometimes and whatnot. But I do want to go to red flag number 46. It says you are looking for something serious, but he isn't, and he still tells you that he likes you, wants to keep hanging out, and still wants to act like you're dating. Talk to me about that red flag.
Mm. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. This is a red flag that a lot of, and I'm only saying like a lot of women because I am a woman. I don't know, men's experiences with this, but I'm always open to like talking to people. So that's why I'm not trying to, I want to let people know, like, I'm not trying to generalize like, oh, only women are doing it. Not at all, sis. It's just because it's my experience and I'm a woman.
Mhm.
Yeah. So someone who is basically, this is the equivalent of, so this actually kind of happened to me a couple years ago. Fun story. A guy being like, oh, I'm not ready for a relationship, but yet okay, you're wanting to spend all this time with me, like, yeah, hell, you're trying to hold my hand, like all these little things, like not having like these other healthy boundaries and stuff. And basically that's code for, and I've heard men say this, that is code for he doesn't want to be in a relationship with you. You know, so like somebody else can come
That's
along.
crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So that is a red flag. And anybody who is you know, if you're wanting something serious and they're not, but they want it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like having like platonic healthy friendships with opposite sex. You know, like that's actually something I've been praying for. And the Lord is bringing like more brothers that I'd be like, hey, bro, let's spend time together. But we both know like where we are. You know, now if something changes, you know, we have a maturity level to be like, hey, I'm actually starting to like you as more than a friend. Like, can we talk about this? You know, whatever. That's totally different, you know. But if it's like, you want something serious, this person doesn't, but they're like, oh, but I still want to hang out with you all the time. And I want to act like we're dating and I want to hold your hand and put my arm around you and stuff. It's like, that's always a red flag, because it's like, so you basically want want to be in a relationship, but you don't want the title or the commitment.
Yeah,
Exactly.
commitment issues.
Yeah,
That's a huge
yeah.
red flag. Huge.
Yeah. Like, want to use that person as a boyfriend or girlfriend, but you don't want to actually be in a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not fair to that person. And obviously that person who is looking for something serious needs to be like, set up those boundaries to be like, hey,
Of course, but if they don't, if they don't set those boundaries, then if they don't set that boundary, they're losing the opportunity for someone else who really wants to be serious. But that someone else is looking at you hanging out with this guy all the time, knowing that he don't want to be serious, but you're still hanging out.
Yeah. And not even just like that. It's like, you know, I have a friend named Alex, like, and we don't hang out that often. Like we might like, hey, how's it going? You want to go to the movies? You want to go to dinner? Like, you know, it's just like here and there. It's not like, oh, we're going out like 2-3 times a week kind of thing, because we don't even have that kind of time because we adults and we got bills to pay. You know what I mean? But I think it would even be different if I'm out to dinner with someone and like if someone sees like this guy has like his arm around me and he's all like, you know, we're like super touchy feely, people are going to be like, oh, they're in a relationship. But if they were to come and be like, oh, are you guys dating? We'd be like, no, we're just friends. They're going to be like, what? Or if I'm like, well, no, yeah, we're friends, but like I want something. It just, yeah. And it gets messy. It gets confusing. So it's like setting the healthy, you can have those healthy opposite sex friendships with like those healthy boundaries, you know?
Yeah. So. Makes sense. So singleness. You know, you've been single for a while. I mean, I don't know your past, so I just know what I know for the past
Since I was born.
You've been single. I'm pretty sure you have moments of, or had moments, or even maybe have, I don't know, moments of loneliness and like, man, God, when are you gonna send me that guy? Or, you know, I'm this age, all my friends that are younger are getting married. Like, how does that make you feel? And how do you go on about really resting in Christ in your singleness and waiting, even with still feeling lonely sometimes? Because there's nothing wrong to feeling lonely.
Yeah.
You know, we're humans. It's gonna happen, but we cannot let that overtake us. You know what I'm saying? And fall in temptation. I'm like, can't take it no more. I need to find a guy or a girl or whatever the case may be. You know, but how do you personally deal with it? How will you encourage others to learn how to wait and to embrace singleness? The reason why I say that, and it's not, and I know some people will be like, oh, but you're not single. Of course you can say that, but I was single one time, right? A lot of people tend to idolize marriage or idolize being in a relationship, but singleness is also beautiful because I mean Paul says it. Listen, if you're single, listen, enjoy your life, do everything you can for the Lord. You know, I thought like take field trips. Go
and
on.
in the last live we did, we looked into that. I think that was the 1 Corinthians chapter 7, right? And I learned that he preferred, that was a preference for him. Like Paul gave the advice of, if you can stay single, you know, but if you're burning with passion, get married.
Yeah.
So he didn't restrict marriage for, Christians, but
Exactly.
he elevated singleness and he saw it as a gift.
Of course, and you
So
do have more
yeah,
time now. And I did say in the last live too that, and then he also said because when you're married, that's it. It's like yes, you're still serving the Lord, but now you got another person that you got to be, And I
Yeah.
was saying that, and I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back to singlehood because for nothing. But like I can't do what I used to do before. Like
Yeah.
I used to stay up till like 4 in the morning just reading, you know, listening to sermons, coming home whenever I want, doing whatever I want, and obviously good things. I can't just do that. I can't be like, oh, I'm leaving the house and then I come home whenever I want. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't work like that in a marriage.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I'm happy and I wouldn't trade it for anything else at all. I wouldn't go back to singlehood because I can't have those things. Like, you know that I love reading books, Brittany.
Yes.
This year alone, in 2019, and I think 2019 helped, 2020 helped because we were in the pandemic and I was working from home. I read about 20 books. This year alone, I only read like 3 books. Like, it was hard to accept that in the beginning
Wow.
because I love reading and I had to, but then I also had to realize that I have a wife to serve and attend this and that. But it was hard for me in the beginning, especially in our marriage, that I couldn't read as much anymore because I have this now, I have that, I have to balance. It was very hard. But I finally learned, and I still think about it. I'm like, damn, I only read 3 books. Like that's horrible. But I'm content. I learned that I could read as many books as I want. It doesn't mean anything. Like as
and
long as I'm doing what I'm doing as a husband and all that
yeah,
stuff, that's what counts.
and I
You
think
need
that
to read Caleb.
yeah.
Yes, and not Caleb.
That
Exactly.
goes back to embracing the season that you're in. Obviously, that's easier said than done. For with being single, there are times where you do long for companionship, and you
Yeah.
can experience loneliness, disappointment, and all of those things. And then with being married, now you're constantly like interacting with this person minute by minute, second by second, and of course there's going to be conflict, and you might have moments where
Yeah, because she's
you
so annoying, man.
yeah, definitely. But
I'm kidding. I'm the annoying one.
you'll have moments where you kind of wish that you could do more on your own. But when that's we have to remember that God has us in different seasons of life for a reason. And what is he calling us to do now as a married person or as a single person or dating whoever?
Mm.
um
But
I
yeah,
think
talk to us
yeah.
about that and encouraging those that are single. Maybe some here that are in the live are single. Well, Manassa is single too. So, but yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, first singleness. So I'll just share a little bit about that. So I'm 33. I'm about to be 34 next month, y'all. Getting older. I love getting older.
what?
I would not go back to my 20s for anything. Like I wouldn't even go back to 30. Like I'm gonna be 34 next month, and I've literally been single since I came out the womb. So I've like never had a boyfriend, never been in a relationship. I have, been on dates and like, dated people or whatever, like literally max 3 dates and then been like, yeah, this ain't it. And so it has been like mountains and valleys, just like with anything in life. And those valleys that I've had have been really, really deep, but God has always been there with me. And something I realized like in 2019, I had like a whole like not like a bad situation, but like I met someone that I was like, oh my gosh, is this my husband? Because he had a heart for evangelism and discipleship and hospitality. And he was single and he's godly and like same age and he's mature. It seems really cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this him? Is this him? And God basically showed me that I had been suppressing all of the disappointment, all of the hurt, all of these emotions. I was like, I just gotten tired of being like discouraged and not meeting anybody I was interested in, and seeing everybody around me, you know, roommates and friends, like getting into relationships and getting married. And obviously, like, I'm happy for them, but I'm still like hurting because I'm like, Lord, I've been over here like praying and waiting, and I've been abstinent like for like, you know, right now, like 12 and a half years, you know, but like almost as long as I've been saved, I've been like walking this abstinence journey, you know, and that's definitely had its ups and downs. We're going to talk about that. But one of the things that God, and Manny and Kiana, what y'all said, like having this time to serve the Lord wholeheartedly, like, I mean, so many different ministry opportunities and getting to travel and go see friends and pour into people and be able to stay up those late nights, not just like, oh, I just want to stay up, but like ministering to people, like praying for people, being able to, you know, I don't know, move around different places. Just having that freedom has been really great. But like I say, in those valleys, God has shown me like it is okay. Like the desire for godly companionship in marriage is a good thing, because singleness, the same way marriage is a gift, singleness is a gift too. So like marriage is a gift if you marry to the right person. Let me say that. So, you know, I mean, you know, I know some people can attest to that, but marriage is a gift and singleness is a gift, and they both have their unique challenges and, you know, challenges and positive, you know, aspects. But God has really shown me that, and I'll say for myself, like he has wanted me to be honest about like my very deep desire for godly companionship, you know, and marriage. So that's kind of a little bit of my story. So if anybody is like struggling with like, oh, I need to be content and just not think about it, like that's what I realized was that God, that's not how God works. That's not what he wants. It's like, you can do both. You can say, you know what, Lord, I am pursuing you wholeheartedly and I'm going to do what you call me to do. And I also want godly companionship. You know, I think sometimes we do too much of the either or, the extreme, like, oh, you have to be content and not think about marriage and not pray for it, which is what I did. I was like, I'm not going to think about it, talk about it, pray about it. And then I had this like intense emotional like explosion that like I ended up crying for like a week straight, because I was like, all these emotions were just coming out that I've been trying to suppress. And God was like, I never wanted you to suppress these emotions. I wanted you to continue bringing them to me and pouring them out to me, because they're not bad emotions, you know? And then, or, you know, like going to the other extreme of like, oh my gosh, I have to go on 75 dates this week and I have to go to this thing and that event and that event. And does anybody know does anybody know anybody who's single? Like, I'll take anybody as long as he's breathing and he's a Christian. He could be 75 about to die, you know, I'll take him. Like, not, you know, we're not saying that either, but having that balance of is both and like, and this even goes back to in Genesis, is it 2:18, where it's like, or no, maybe it's Genesis 3. I can't remember. It's in Genesis, but where God is talking about he didn't create man to be alone. So I know a lot of people talk about that in like a marriage aspect, but I really believe like there's so many of the scriptures that go deeper than what we just initially see on the surface. God created us to be in fellowship with him first and foremost, right? But sin has separated us. That's why we need a savior. That's why we need Jesus. And then God created us to be in fellowship with each other. So it's like the horizontal and the vertical, right? So if God created us to be in fellowship with each other, with other like people, just in general, men and women, it makes sense that he would also give us a desire for godly companionship. So there's nothing wrong with that, but obviously not taking that too far out of context. And again, being like, I'm so desperate and I'll just take anybody, you know? So there's that. I don't know if I answered that question, because I should have been writing these down so I wouldn't get sidetracked, because I do that sometimes. I think, was there something else that you asked in regards to that?
We didn't mention abstinence. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Oh yeah,
talk about the difference between abstinence and celibacy, I guess, because I learned something new.
Yeah. I'm an abstinent peeps at. Woo! I know some of y'all are like, woohoo, but I'm ready for this to be over. Look, I get it. Okay. So normally, abstinence is, well, sexual abstinence, because you can abstain from alcohol or tobacco, you know, different things. But sexual abstinence is you are abstaining from sexual activity until a certain point, which for us as Christians who want to get married is is marriage, right? And then celibacy is, some people use celibacy and abstinence interchangeably, but I think just to like help people be a little bit more clear, celibacy is abstaining from all sexual activity. Like it's a lifelong thing. So you're just like, I'm going to be celibate for the rest of my life. So like, think about in the Catholic Church, priests take a vow of what? Celibacy. So that's like lifelong. They don't take a vow of abstinence. They take a vow of celibacy. You know, same with nuns, you know, which is not in the scriptures, but neither here nor there. So the abstinence is you are abstaining until a certain point. Celibacy is like, no, God has called me to do this like lifelong. And I actually have, I have a friend who is, he's same-sex attracted, and he is living a celibate life for Jesus. So, you know, he would not call himself abstinent because he's not attracted to women, and, you know, marriage is not, you know, does not look like it's in his future. So he's like, I'm celibate. So he is like honoring God with his, you know, his whole being and pursuing a life of, it's lifelong sexual abstinence. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you. I read that the other day. I'm like, that makes sense. You know, so that's good. That's good. All right. So now we're going to get into the question part, Q&A. We do have some questions in our phones to ask, but we also want questions from the audience, from the live chat. So just throw in your questions in the chat while we ask Brittany these other questions. Don't be timid. Ask away.
Ask anything.
Ask anything, you know. But yes. So one of the questions, you know what? I did have a question that's not on this list. That's very important. So, how important for you or for a single person to be involved in the lives and not like all the time or hanging out with friends that are married? The reason why I asked that because at my church, our church, the pastor enforces the importance of get-togethers, cross-referencing, like whether it's different stages of life, statuses, like single people hang out with the married people. You know, married people invite singles into your home. Like he encourages that all the time. Now, obviously, I'm not saying be the third wheel all the time, but you know what I'm saying? Right. But like, I think that's so important because singleness, like there's a lot of single people that feel left out. Like, damn, like now that you're married, like you don't even talk to me no more. We don't hang out, you know? But what are your thoughts about that?
Oh my gosh. When you were saying what your pastor said, my heart just like jumped, like leapt for joy. Because since I've been a believer, God has put amazing like married couples in my life who have like literally just amoeba'd me into their families. Like, hey, do you want to come over for dinner? Hey, do you want to hang out? Hey, come spend time with us. And because again, one of the joys of singleness, if they can't leave the house because I'm like, I'll come to you. I will come. I can come to you. You want me to pick something up, come to the store. I can come over after the kids go down and we're up till 2, you know, maybe not 2 o'clock anymore, but like 10, 11, 12, you know? But like, I love that your pastor recognizes like, no matter what season of life you're in, because guess what? Here's another thing too. A lot of these people who want to act brand new when they get married, it's like, well, what if your God takes your spouse away tomorrow? You're single. You know what I mean? You could be single by death, divorce, abandonment again. You know, you could single again by death, divorce, or abandonment. So it's like, don't act brand new. Don't forget what it was like in that season, you know, where you were single and you had those highs and those lows and how maybe hopefully you had people who were there for you. But it is vastly important to be in fellowship with people who are married, with people who are, you know, widowed or, you know, divorced in all kinds of different seasons of life, people with kids, people without kids, because when we're in these and there is value in like, okay, yes, I have my single girlfriends that I hang out with, you know, both of my roommates obviously are single as well. But like, I have my married friends I have my married sister friends I hang out with. I have my married, you know, brothers that I'm close to. I have my single brothers I'm close to, you know, and, you know, I have friends who are divorced, friends who are widowed, you know, things of that nature. Friends with kids, without kids. And let me tell you, my life is enriched my life would not be as enriched and well-rounded as it is if I did not have a variety of people in seasons of life who've been from different backgrounds. I would not have the variety and the well-roundedness and the mindset that I have if God had not put those people into my life, and if I were like, oh, I only want to be around like single people. So.
Yes.
Go ahead and
it's interesting you guys say that because we're married couple friends. Go ahead. Yes.
But yeah, I think it is absolutely imperative to have healthy relationships with married people have single friends have married friends, because you just get a different perspective, and not just about marriage and not just about singleness, but just in general, you're just getting to know them as people and like as a unit and as individuals too, because marriage, yes, two become one, but you're still an individual as well, right? It's just like you're not only operating as an individual anymore. Like you said, Manny, like for me, I'm like, I can come and go, and I can come in at 12 o'clock if I want to, and my roommates might be like, hey, are you okay? Da, da, da. But like if I'm married, you know, my husband can be like, hey, babe, like, you okay? When you coming home, you know, just want to make sure you're good, you know, or, you know, I would know like, okay, let me try to be home by 10. So he's not worried about me or whatever. But yeah, I think it is massively important, and we need to definitely, as a church, be more intentional about that, because that's something I put on my abstinence post, is like one of the reasons I think it is so hard for single Christians to continue or remain abstinent, or, you know, is because of the lack of community. So even if let's say you go to a church where it's mostly married people, even if there are some single people, if you don't have people who want to actually be in your life, like, hey, how are you doing? Like, come hang out with us, come spend time with us. You're always welcome here. Being intentional. When you have community that's intentional about you and about your relationship with God, and your overall holistic well-being, it won't alleviate all the obstacles and trials of living an abstinent lifestyle, but it can definitely help, because in those moments, I think you asked about loneliness, in those moments when you're feeling lonely, knowing like, man, I can text like this group of ladies that is made up of married women and of single women, or, you know, like, if I need to talk to a brother, you know, about like, hey, there's this guy, you know, I can get wise counsel from like this brother over here, you know, just like community is one of the biggest emphases I think God puts, one of the biggest, aspects of our Christian growth that God emphasizes. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I want to clarify, because I think what she's also referring to, why her married friends are saying that, I think is because she's saying that if hanging out with them individually. Now, for example, me personally, I'm not going to hang out with a female married friend by myself. Just me.
Or single friend.
Or single. I'm not going to do it. But what I was also referring to more is like me, Kiana, as a married couple, inviting you who are single, Brittany, or even the other Brittany, if she's single too, right? Let's just say, over to our house, or a hangout, us three.
Yeah.
That's more of what I'm referring to when couples get together with other single people. Not necessarily a guy and a girl, or whatever. I'm talking about more like the couple inviting a single person over for a dinner or whatever. That's more of what I'm referring to, just in case, for clarity of what her friends are saying, because it can get kind of weird, you know.
I do want to bring up something that made headlines a few months ago, just to get your thoughts on it. So, Kiera Sheard, she made headlines because she said that
you probably know about this because this was floating all over the internet.
Yeah. And you probably, that her mom, I think, gave her this advice. Miss Karen Sheard gave her the advice not to allow her single friends to stay at her house with her, you know, her husband being there, whatever. So she got her single friends a hotel. I was a little bit back and forth on that. At first, I was like, she tripping. She doing too much. But then I was like, yeah, I could see the wisdom in that, but who are your friends though?
Mhm.
You know, like if you're worried about your friends staying in the house with your husband, you and your
Throw
husband,
away and start over. Throw them away and start
Because
over.
obviously, if the
You
husband
worry about your
has
husband.
his wife's female friends, women friends there, obviously, yeah, he'll come out and he'll probably like cook something, provide drinks for everybody, isn't that? But he ain't gonna be in the room all the time with them. Because I'm
Yeah.
sure that it's for her to hang out with them. But for her to be like, nah, you can't be here because my husband here. I'm gonna get you a hotel. What kind of friends do you have then?
Yeah, or is your husband like sus? Like, is he like some type of, you know? Because I don't know. That's how I saw it. Of course, you know, other people would agree with that. Like, yeah, you know, don't put your single friends around your man or whatever. To me, that just sounds a little insecure, and that's saying a lot coming from me because I have very like hard boundaries when it comes to, you know, friendships and all that type of stuff. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, like I meant. Yeah, no, I completely agree. When I saw that, I was like, my first instinct was like, what kind of friends do you have? And then I was like, wait, what kind of husband do you have? I'm questioning everybody in your life at this point. And if I'm questioning people in your life, I'm questioning your judgment because you married this man that you don't want your friends around, and you have these friends that you don't want your man around. So, you know what I'm saying? It's just like I'm questioning you more now than I'm questioning your friends or your husband. And yeah, it does scream insecurity to me as well, because I just, you know, and so it's like, okay, obviously, okay, your house, your rules, but like, I'm like, something is off about that to me. Like I don't have, yeah, like I would never have friends that I would be like, oh, I don't trust you. You have to stay in, hold on one second.
But yes, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was my dad. But yeah, I'm just we'll see how long that marriage lasts, because that just
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I don't
kind
know.
of iffy.
It could be a case by case, I guess. But then again, if it's like that, if you're feeling some type of way about your friends or your husband, then you got to investigate, you know. But
Yeah.
then if it's just you, like you have an insecurity and you just don't like you have trust issues, then
mm,
you need to investigate yourself. Like you
yeah.
need to talk to somebody because you know, and I totally get that. I get it. Past experiences can make someone feel like they can't trust anyone and
Mm-hmm.
want to safe proof their marriage in that way. I completely empathize with that.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a real easy way to push your friends away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you navigate seasons of disappointment and depression while waiting?
Yeah, that is, oof, man. The disappointment. Um, some of the ways I navigate that, or like try to encourage singles to navigate that, is number one, like remembering like God loves you and his timing is perfect. And I know it's cliche, but it's the best cliche, and it still like gets me through when I'm having rough times. The second thing is be honest with God. I don't know if anybody out there is a journaler. I'm a writer. I've been writing since I was like 7 or 8. Journaling has been so therapeutic for me, just like writing out everything, like literally everything. Um, and just being honest with God, like talking to God and being honest with God about where I am. And like,
Mm,
Lord, this hurts. Lord, this sucks. Why isn't this? And why isn't that? Just like getting it out, because God is so big and he can handle it. So being honest with God about where you are. Um, Something else that has helped me through disappointment is being reminded of, well, I know from personal experience and also from others' experiences and even like unknown. So the men that God, I know God has protected me from, being grateful that I've not had to deal with any foolishness in that way, and just being like, you know what, I'm disappointed about this, but there is something that God sees and knows that I don't see and I don't know.
mm,
So again, it goes back to like trusting him and reflecting on also reflecting on his goodness, reflecting on how he's come through in so many other ways, being reminded of his faithfulness. Yeah, so those are like a couple of the things that have gotten me through, like, disappointment and depression. I'm sure there's some other things, but those are things kind of like, those are like the main things for me.
Awesome.
Mm.
Are all predestined for marriage? If not, how do you ground your expectation?
Predestined.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I don't think all are predestined for marriage. I think about my friend Paul, who is, or like any Christian who has same-sex attraction, who's following the Lord, like, and they're celibate. They're not gonna get married, And here's the thing, guess what, guys? The ultimate goal of the Christian life is not to get married. It's to be a disciple, is to be reconciled to God, is to be ambassador of Christ,
Glorify him forever.
to God, to the Father.
Yeah.
And yeah, marriage is still temporary. Our life is a drop in the bucket. You could get married today, and in a week, go home to glory, and you were married for a week, and like that's it. But yeah, no, all are not predestined to get married. But to answer your question about tempering your expectations, I think this goes back to what I said earlier of saying, Lord, I do desire marriage, and I'm gonna continue, basically, like, I'm gonna serve the Lord and continue praying for marriage. Because I know some people are like, no, I know God has told me I'm gonna get married, and some people are like, I don't know. And I think it's okay to live in that gray of like, I don't know that this will happen, I hope it does, and pray for it while still serving God, because like there's so many different there's so many things that we just don't know. So it's like, okay, I want to get married. I don't know if I'll get married. God has given me this desire. People have told me if you have the desire, you will get married. I don't know. I'm like, what? The bottom line is like, continue serving God and continue praying for marriage if that's what you desire. Praying for and putting yourself out there. Trying to find someone. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
This brother said, "How soon is soon to get married?" I hear stories of people married within 3 months.
Well, I have strong opinions about that one, but I'll keep it to myself.
This is what I'll say real quick. I mean, I have strong opinions on that too, but I think there are some very, very few exceptions.
I've heard 2 weeks.
I heard 2 weeks, yeah. But
so I'm just like, what are we doing? Because
or though,
what did you say?
But was that a situation where they knew each other for 3 years and then it was like, oh,
I don't know.
That would be different. That would be different because if they know each other for 3 years and then they got married to, at least they know each other for 3 years.
Yeah, I've heard of those
meeting
too.
And then get married in 2 weeks. I mean, my coworker, I forgot what it was. My coworker, I mean, she's in her 40s now. She's only had one boyfriend, which is her husband, and she had 3 kids. And this is when I forgot what age she was when they met. She said that they got married like a month later, and she's a believer, and they've been married for 20 years or more, and they have 3 kids. I think that's why I said there's like a major exception to certain things that God just.
It's not to say that it can't work,
right?
But yeah, so what do you have to say about that?
Yeah.
How soon is too soon to get married?
Yeah. So I would definitely say like 2 weeks. I would be like, yeah, no, like unless God came down with like a cloud, it was like a cloud by day, pillar by night, like pillar of fire by night. Like unless God like was like in your face, like this is the one to both of y'all, I'd be like, no. I do. So it's so funny we're talking about this because one of my friends actually, they met and got married within like 6 or 7 months, but they are older, more spiritually mature. They asked, that list of questions, the 18 sections of questions, I gave that to her, and they went through it, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is so like that. Those questions like help them really learn about each other and be like, wow, we do have the same values, we want the same things, and like really each other's character. So anyways, there's that. But gosh, I would say I do think it depends. Now, if these are like teenagers or like people in their early 20s are like, oh, we just met, we want to get married in 3 months, I'd be like, I think y'all slow down a little bit more life. But I do think that if you're at a certain age and it's not about you being desperate, but you both really are wanting to seek the will of God, and you truly talked about some of the deeper deal breakers and things of life. Gosh, because I know people the people I know who've met and gotten married quick, it's been at least 6 or 7 months. It's never been anything like 3 months. If it was 3 months, I'd be like, I feel like anything less than 6 months is probably like a little too short. So yeah, that's kind of but I mean, like I've heard stories like Manny, like you said, like people whose parents like got married in 3 months. They've been married for like 40 some years. But like Kiana said, that's the exception, not rule. And also, you need to look at the quality of their marriage, because there are a lot of people who come from backgrounds where it's like, okay, you get married and that's
Stay
it.
married no matter what.
Even
no matter what.
Right. Even if there's abuse, even if there's inconsistent, even if there's infidelity or like unrepentant infidelity, like all kinds of stuff, cheating, beating, mistreatment, as I would call it. No matter what. So it's like, it's not even about like how long they stayed married, but it's like the quality of their marriage, So yeah. But Kiana, you said you have very strong thoughts about this. I'm like, I want to hear.
I'm really big. I've just seen too many marriages either end in divorce, or people are staying in the marriage because it I guess it hurts them more to leave, or they're afraid to leave. And I just feel, especially if you're on the younger side, so 20, even 30s, I just feel that before you choose to marry someone, you really need to take time to get to know this person and decide if they're a right fit for you. And that doesn't mean that this person's going to be perfect or even have everything that's on your little, list of things that you want. But at the same time, I just don't, I don't, there's no rush, and I understand that marriage is a desire for most people, and engagement in marriage is an exciting thing, but that is not a process to be rushed, because it can get nasty really quick.
Yeah.
If not done correctly, with the proper accountability and the proper questions being asked and the right discernment, and really your heart being in the right place, seeking the Lord and praying while you're dating this person, or courting, however you want to call it. I will agree with you that if the man and the woman are older, which I have seen, so like 45, 50 or whatever, or if they've been married before and they're divorced and they're getting remarried, these are typically people who have like been there, done that. I would say, for the most part, not for all of them, but for the most part, these are not people that need to date for 2 years.
Right.
Because they've played the game, like they know what they want. For the most part. A 50-year-old man should know what he wants. A 50-year-old woman should know. I mean, I'm just saying should, but we know what it's like out there.
Right.
A 50-year-old woman should know what she wants. So, I'm not opposed to hearing, oh, these two people who are like 45, 47, 50, whatever, they got married in like 3 months. These people have history, they know what they're doing. So I'm more okay with that, especially if they've been married before and they're remarrying. I'm not saying that these people are exempt from discernment and accountability from their pastors or whatever. But I think with younger people, I just don't think we're mature enough to to make such an important decision like that in such a small amount of time. I don't think that, and this goes for men and women. I don't think that that's, again, for the most part, because there are exceptions to that rule, and God can do whatever He wants. He can come down, cloud by day, fire by night, and say, "This is your husband, this is your wife." He certainly can, you know. But I just think, especially if you're younger, please take your time. Don't rush into marriage, because you just don't know. People put their best foot forward, and you think you're marrying your Prince Charming or your princess, and you wake up the next day and you find out you're married to a monster, and boom, like it's just, you just made it 10 times harder for yourself. So I hate to sound so pessimistic, but I'm a realist. So I've heard so many stories, many stories.
Yeah. Brittany said, "How do y'all go about setting boundaries with your friends?" It seems like it's a us question too as well. But I mean, it all depends. I mean, letting your friends. First of all, my friends need to know that I'm married. If they don't, that's a problem. That's another red flag. If you're in a relationship and nobody knows, that's a red flag, right?
Yeah, there's privacy and secrecy. So.
Yeah, exactly. But definitely my friends or people that I talk to, even if I don't know them like that, or even on social media, like people know that I'm married on social media. I don't post about it all the time. I don't need to. I mean, Kiana doesn't like show her face on social media anyway, so I post some pictures sometimes, but I don't. And people know. And I do YouTube videos on finances, and I talk about my marriage with finance, so people know. One thing for us is that one of the boundaries that we set for each other is that we don't text or call anybody after 10 that's from the opposite sex, unless it's like a group chat that we're in and we're writing. But after 10 o'clock, I don't. You're not gonna see me talking to another girl, unless it's obviously like my mother-in-law or my mom or a cousin that I have or whatever. But other than that, you're not really gonna see that happening. Me personally, I don't hang out with any females by myself, unless I'm doing like a project at work and we're working together. But I don't. I'm not hanging out with any female by myself, whether single or not. But I don't know what other boundaries you think you have with friends.
I mean, that's pretty much it. We don't have a lot. I think if we do have any, it's usually boundaries with like opposite sex friends, and that's just to practically guard the marriage. Um, and where we try to be very intentional about hanging, as like we were talking about earlier, hanging out with our single, dating, and married friends, because we can learn from all of them. So when it comes to interacting one-on-one, I don't, me personally, I don't do it for a very long time. I'm not on the phone for 2 hours with a man. If that man is not my father, my brother, or my husband, we're not talking on the phone for 2 hours. Unless, like, there's a problem, or, whatever. Obviously, there could be exceptions to that, like if it's severe. But just like a casual conversation, like, I wouldn't do it. Like a girlfriend, sure. They're sisters in Christ, or just sisters, women that I talk to like all day, text all day. But a guy, like, for me, that's just not something that I do, just because I don't want to. I don't feel the need to do it. And what for? What on earth are we talking about that requires so much attention from me that I can't talk to my husband about? So yeah, that's a big one for me.
Yeah. And I was gonna say about that, because this actually, I listen to Anthony O'Neill's podcast, which has been like pretty, like, I'm like, okay, he's a pretty decent guy. And he was, yeah, he is. He lives in Nashville.
For Saturday, his theology scares me sometimes. He be listening to, he's a TD Jakes fan and people like that. Anyway, sorry to bust the bubble if that was the case. But anyway, continue.
Oh yeah, I kind of peeped that, and I was like, oh, I was like, well, another one bites the dust, you know. But I'm like, man, like if you could just get rid of that, like, you know, he'd be like pretty decent. Like he seems like he really loves God and loves people, you know. Anyways, we can come back to that later. But something that I think he brought up one time, because, you know, I really like how he interviews a variety of people, right? Single people, single mothers, single fathers, you know, married people, married with kids, you know, like I love that he has a variety of people on his show. It's like, again, perspective, and you learn so much from so many different types of people, which we all need to be open to. Like, oh, I gotta go back to something about like dating and going on dates with believers, because my views have recently changed on that. But anyways, yeah, it's interesting. But I will say, like, as I've been praying for the Lord to bring me like godly brothers, like there is one brother, and I don't know, maybe you could speak to this. I don't know if you had like close guy friends before you got married. Like, oh man, like this is like my really close friend, and like when we do talk, like we can talk for like 2-3 hours because we're close. My friend, he's one of my really close friends. He lives in Michigan right now. And I've known him for years, and he's like my little brother, and like we talk regularly. And so I've always known, like since I met him, we just like started growing in a friendship. I'm like, if my boyfriend or husband does not like Quran, this is going to be a problem, because like I love, like my brother is so solid. So I told Quran, I was like, look, that's going to be a part of the litmus test. If like he don't like, if y'all don't get along, I'm gonna be like, I don't know what to do about this, because I'm still going to maintain that relationship with Quran. And I want my husband to be like, oh, Quran, like, yeah, like, oh, y'all gonna have your, you know, 2-3 hour talk, kind of like, you know, because y'all have known each other for years. So I think that is something worth mentioning. Like, if you have had like a genuine friendship with somebody before you got married, and you still have, obviously, you know, time is like, Manny, like you said, you know, you're married now, so you don't have as much time. But if it's like, yeah, I could talk to this sister for like an hour and a half, but I met her before, like, you know, like we had a relationship before versus like, you know, after, and it's a little bit different. So I don't know if like, you know, it's different if you're coming in with like opposite sex friendships that, you know, still respect your relationship and the boundaries, and there's nothing to worry about, versus this is a new person, and it's like, you know, probably not going to be like.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Yeah, I just think it looks different. The dynamic obviously changes. Some people grow apart, some people grow closer.
Yeah.
You know, and because, you know, not everybody, which is something I've experienced, not everybody reacts positively to the friendship changing once someone gets into a relationship.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's how friendships die. But if there's a mutual respect there, and the friend is willing to develop a friendship with your significant other, I think that's really important. And I think, you know, there still has to be healthy boundaries, of course. But you don't just eliminate your friendships just because you're in a relationship now. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
But I do think that, you know, the dynamic has to change. I guess what I meant was, I'm not going to be spending as much time with that person as much as I would with, you know, my spouse or my family, just because the priority has changed now. Whereas when I was single, you know, I could talk to whoever I want whenever I wanted. But now it's not whatever I want. It's what have my husband and I compromised on or agreed on is appropriate, and, you know, take it from there.
No, so we're gonna tackle these two last questions, but you did wanted to share something about dating new believers or whatever it is that you said.
Okay, so we had spring break back in April. I work at a school in enrollment and records, but I'm a writer. So I started thinking, like, someone posed a question, like, why is it that so many Christian women go years without going on dates? And I was like, that's so true, because in Okay, so from 2016 to 2019, I did not go on a date. It had been 3 years. And then like so anyways, like there was one time where like I went like 3 years without going on a date. And something I came to realize over the spring break, I was like, well, wait a minute. If we want to go on dates, and most Christian women will be like, well, I want to go on dates with like Christian men. It's like, well, you have to go on a date with someone to figure out if they even are a Christian. And this depends, like if you're online or whatever. But I used to be like, well, I have to like grill a man theologically to find out if he's a Christian before I go on a date with him. But once I like kind of took a step back and was like, well, wait a minute, why am I dating? I had to reevaluate, why am I dating? What's the purpose of, me dating? And while I am dating, like I would eventually like to find someone to marry, I recognize like that's not the only reason that I'm dating. It's like it could be to like just meet new people, get out, learn how to interact with men in a healthy way, learn how to set boundaries, learn how to say no. So you could make a friend, you could meet someone for a business, connection. Heck, it could be like a coworker, could connect with this person, or you could meet your person through that person, And so once I kind of like got out of the mindset of like, well, I'm only going to date Christian men, because let me tell you, if we're only doing that, like, oh, I only want to go on a date with like a Christian man that I find attractive. How often do you go out on dates do you meet Christian men that you find attractive who actually ask you out? So that's why we're going years and years and years without going on dates, rather than being like, so I'll say for me, and everybody doesn't have to do this, but for me, the bare minimum is, are you kind? Are you respectful? Can we have good conversation? So if those three things are present and I meet you and you're like, hey, do you want to go out sometime? I'd be like, yeah. Then we go on a date. I can ask questions, get to know you, find out where you are. And even if it's like, okay, I went on one date with this guy, that's fine. But guess what? Like, this is an image bearer that I learned something from. Can't tell you how many, like I've been on a couple dates where like some guy was like, he shared, I don't know, he shared some random information or whatever. And I was like, I did not know that. That's fascinating. So I learned a new piece of information, something about the world, because of this person. And it can be, and I'm not advocating for missionary dating, by the way, ladies. Do not date a man to be like, oh, I can bring him to Jesus. No, he already needs to be at Jesus. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like, it can be an opportunity to be like, oh yeah, so do you have a spiritual background? You can have like spiritual conversations with people, and like, you never know how they might open up. It might be a witnessing opportunity. But then like, once you realize, okay, this person isn't a believer, you can decide, okay, would this person be cool just to keep like in my life, from time to time, be like, hey, how's it going? Or, hey, there's this networking event. Like, cause I know that you're in business or whatever. Here's this thing, here's that thing. You could connect them to other people. So I've kind of become a little bit more open-minded with I still have standards, by the way. Like if there's something that's off, if one of those three things is not there, I'm like, absolutely not. But the bare minimum is like, are you kind? Are you respectful? Can we have good conversation? Because like meeting somebody for coffee to be like, oh man, you're a dope person. You can end up talking to them for 3 hours about music. They might put you on like a new event, or like something, in Atlanta or your city, or like a travel, you just never know how you could connect with somebody. So that's kind of like my thought with going on dates, not like continually dating somebody, because I think that's too well. And then also you have to know yourself. Are you strong in it? Like if you're not in a place where you could be like, you know what, this guy is cool, and I'm gonna tell him like, hey, you're really great, I don't see a romantic fit. But if yeah, like I wouldn't be able to tell a guy that I had a really good connection with, even if you don't love Jesus, like that I couldn't, like, you're just gonna have to wait until you get to a better, more mature place where you could be like, yeah, like you're a cool person, keep it moving. So
all right, last two.
Okay.
How do you truly know if it's God's will for you to be married or not?
You'll wait until God brings you somebody to marry. I mean, that's all I got. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about and to like I struggle with this because I'm like, I don't want to ever say like, oh, like to somebody like you will be married, and they may not, but to well, okay, I'll say this. I do believe if God has put the desire for marriage in your heart, that there it is, he will fulfill it in some way. We just don't know in what way.
Yeah.
If you have that desire for that, like, deep godly companionship, it could be a lifelong friend that he brings you, or it could be a spouse. And so in my heart of hearts, I want to say, like, if God has given you like this deep desire, like, he will, bring it to pass. But I'm not God, so I don't know. But I try to, I don't want to discourage someone, but I also don't want to give someone false hope. Exactly. So I just know if God is giving you that desire, he's going to fulfill it in some way. So.
Amen. Yeah. And the last one, they say you can really get to know someone for 10 years and still not know them fully. Turning the table, how long should you wait before realizing they don't want marriage or isn't serious?
Well, I am a fan of asking the hard questions in the beginning. I'm not talking about like, how many kids do you want, like, on the first date, or like what month you want to get married in, or like, where do you want to live, well, you can ask that without being like, over the top. But I think asking people like, hey, why are you dating? I'm like, how do I normally ask this? The question, what are you looking for, is kind of like overplayed and like, whatever. Even like, what are your intentions? I think figuring out how to ask someone if they are looking for something, and even saying something serious is not good enough. Like, oh, are you something long term? Because a lot of people are shacking up, for 10, 20, 50, 75,000 years, right? We're not doing that over here because we don't want to, do all that. But I think it's important to ask someone kind of early in the beginning, like, oh yeah, like, what are you, for lack of a better term, like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for, eventually to find someone to marry? Are you looking just for a short-term relationship, long-term relationship? And not just asking that question, but if they're saying like, oh yeah, I'm looking for, someone to potentially marry, but watching their actions, because if their actions and their words do not match, they're inconsistent, and that's a flag that you need to be like, something is up here, so do not proceed. But yeah, asking that up front, like seeing, are you on the same page about, oh, we're both looking for marriage. So if you're deciding to get to know each other, it's not like Kiana was saying earlier, it's not like, oh, we're dating and we are going to get married, but it's like, we're both getting to know each other. We're dating to see if we could be a good fit marriage wise. Right. But if someone's like, yeah, not looking for anything serious, and you are, then you need to hear them, ladies, especially if a man says he's not looking for something serious, believe him, because he's not.
Exactly. And bounce.
Yeah. And bounce, and just be like, oh, okay, cool. And keep it moving, because sometimes, us as women, we think like, oh, well, he hasn't met me yet. No, if he's not looking for something serious, just men say what they mean. Okay. So, but if he says, yeah, no, I am looking for something serious, and he's being consistent, and he's pursuing you, and you're getting to know each other, and he's being intentional, it's like, okay, his words and his actions are matching up. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
So as we come into a close, like right on time, right? This was a dope part 2, right, on Christian dating and red flag. So for those that are coming in, the video will be up, so you can rewatch the first half of it. She did speak about red flags and all that kind of stuff. However, you can also, if you see on the screen, where her blog post, which is haveaseat.blog, you can find that article or blog on red flags. She literally has over 120 of them written down in there and all that kind of stuff. So you can go there and read it. You'll probably need to like spend 3 days reading it so you could marinate all that stuff. Hey, listen, it's I think it's important for all of us, even for myself, for all of us to really sit down and maybe not in one shot, but to like read it through, because you may have red flags that you don't even know about. And this is not for you to like, oh, feel bad, oh snap. Like you just may not know you have it. And because it's written down and because you realize it, oh snap, I didn't know I do this to my friends or this to my spouse. Now I have to find a way to stop it. Or how can I communicate with my spouse to, or ask if you're married or if you're in a relationship, ask your partner, hey, what are certain things that you feel like I do that's a red flag? It's better to ask those questions now than later on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a matter of fact, that shows maturity. Your spouse or your partner will respect you for asking that question because it shows that you care. So take your time reading that. So I thank you guys in the chat for your question. Thank you for coming in. Brittany, you the bomb. You need to come to
Mhm.
Miami when you need to see Caleb. You need to meet him.
Yes.
I'm gonna be home for 2 months. She's gonna be home for 4 months, so you can come through.
You get you get 2 months paternity leave.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm getting it for myself. Well, in the state of Florida, well, that's FMLA, so I don't know how it is in every state, but in Florida, you can get up to 12 weeks. But I'll go in detail more with you offline.
So I think that's great. We need
Yeah,
better maternity and maternity and paternity leave.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yes. So guys, stay tuned for part 3, which is gonna be the last one because Kiana is about to give birth soon.
7 weeks.
Yes, part 3 is we wanted to find an older married couple, but we couldn't find any yet. So it will just probably be us again. But it's gonna be, what is it? Engaged and
Engagement and
married.
marriage.
Now what? So now we're gonna talk about the stage of being engaged and questions like, okay, so I have a ring, so can I have sex now? Is it okay to have sex
That's a
being
legit
engaged?
question. People really think that.
Yeah.
So answer those questions and then talk about now we're married. Talk about premarital counseling, even postmarital counseling. I think is important to have. So we're gonna talk about that stage of life. So we covered the dating stage and all that. Also with continuation with that and red flags and singleness and abstinence to now I'm engaged and then I'm married. Now what's next?
Now, what do we do?
What do we do with that? You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, hit me up, Adeline. But yes, so stay tuned for part 3. Kiana is working on the thumbnail for that, and maybe in 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks. We just have a lot of stuff going on, preparing our apartment for the baby, and just a lot of stuff. But yes, Brittany, thank you for coming on, taking the time,
Thanks
and
for
we shall keep in touch. You rock. Anything else? Any last words?
yeah, y'all just like keep trusting the Lord. Do not settle because you will regret it. Okay. Look, I don't know personally, but I got stories. Okay.
Yeah.
Lord, and yeah, serve God and pray for marriage and yeah.
Awesome. Anyways, until next time, my friends. Peace.
Bye.